Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day 455. 455, I like that number because that was the very, very good motor, by the way, by Pontiac. Made that. I had a buddy that had a Trans Am back in high school, had a 455 in it. I loved that car. Anyway, the 455 cubic inch General Motors motor is not why we're here today. It's for other reasons. TowerGate day 455, June the 8th, 2018, Friday. Fun Friday. Boy, we got a lot of fun things today. Lots of news today. So let's go ahead and get to it. Oh boy, where to start? Let's see. Let's just go ahead and start right here. Well, on the last refuge, they have posted up that the IG release date, the new IG release date, we'll see if it actually happens, is going to be June the 14th. That would be next week. That's also President Trump's birthday. Hey, that's a pretty good birthday present to get the IG report released. And hopefully it's not so heavily redacted that we can't get anything from it. I certainly would hope, I would love to see, it probably won't happen, but I think that President Trump should declassify that sucker the day after it's released. It's released on the 14th, he should declassify it on the 15th. Every bit of it, all 400 and some odd pages. So that means that the first Inspector General hearing, Horowitz, the custodian, is going to appear in front of Congress. That would be the Senate Judiciary Committee. That's Grassley's committee, and that will be on the 18th. So he's appearing in front of Congress on the 14th, and he's releasing the IG report on the 14th and appearing in front of Congress on the 18th. So I expect to also go over, because he usually does one on the Senate side, one on the House side. So I assume he'll be over at the House Intelligence Committee probably within a week after that. And that should probably be a little better. So yes, declassify that IG report, Mr. President. Just declassify it. Okay, what's next? We have the Senate Intel Committee under investigation for unauthorized disclosure. Man, there is no more corrupt committee in the entire United States Congress. The House Ways and Means Committee is pretty bad, but it's hard to beat the Senate Intel Committee for being total defenders of the deep state. You have people there on that committee such as Little Marco, Richard Burr, who's a real backstabbing son of a bitch, Republican, Mark Warner, who Burr was in cahoots with Mark Warner on a lot of things that will be damaging to the president. Of course, turn in your guns, Mr. and Mrs. America, Dianne Feinstein. She's on that committee, and of course the presidential hopeful for the Democrats, that moron Kamala Harris, is also on that committee, as well as a bunch of other people who are highly deplorable. So we know about all the leaks that's been coming out of that committee, and we know that, of course, Adam the Bug-Eyed Fool Schiff is over there on the House side doing it, but on the Senate side, certainly you had Mark Warner. We know about Feinstein, and the little stunt she played when she released the Glenn Simpson stuff. We know that one of her aides is now working for Confusion GPS, and the whole nine yards. So, yeah, it's good to see that the Senate Intelligence Committee is under investigation, but this is by the DOJ, I assume, so I wouldn't expect that they're going to do anything but cover up. Probably nothing will come out of that, but it's at least good to see that they're pretending. And, of course, yes, there was a lot of unauthorized material coming out of the Senate Intel Committee. We know that. Well, we now know why only 3 people attended that hearing for Bill Priestap. We now know why from the last refuge. The hearing was closed, and it was limited to only 3 people who were selected by Trey Gowdy and Bob Goodlatte, the 2 heads of the 2 committees that are joined for this particular event. The Joint Committee is what it's called. The hearing was not available to all committee members, and so they just narrowed it down to 3. So there we know why only 3 people were at the hearing, because that's the way that Gowdy and Goodlatte did it. They only allowed 3 people, and it was Jordan Meadows and this Democrat named Kirschenmuth. So why would Gowdy and Goodlatte do that? The only thing I can think of is maybe they were concerned with leaks, and they wanted to have as few people there as possible to limit the leaking that might happen or something. There may have been other reasons for it. I just don't know. I don't understand it. It's we have these hearings all the time, and I've never seen them limit. Maybe it's happened before, but I'm not aware of it. That the leaders of the two committees would limit how many people could show up to the hearing and ask questions. It's just a little strange. I'm not familiar with that happening very often, if at all. But that's what we're being told happened. It was Gowdy and Goodlatte who laid down the rules on that, and thank God that Jim Jordan and Mark Meadows were at least the two Republicans who were asking questions, because we know those two guys would ask real questions. And I hope they got some real answers. I really do. But that answers that question. The Department of Justice is now saying they will brief the Gang of Eight on the spy, that's Stephen Halper, but may provide access to documents with possible delay. These are the documents that have been subpoenaed by the House Intel Committee Chairman Devin Nunes. Now, Jordan was on Sean Hannity talking about this, and you could tell he was really hacked off, and I don't blame him. And we're learning now the backstory to what happened in last week's meeting. Of course, these were subpoenaed documents. So Nunes and Gowdy, and I guess their investigators, show up to this meeting. I don't know if Rodenstein was there, but Rodenstein's people were certainly there. And they would not show the documents to Gowdy and Goodlatte. Or, Jordan and, not Jordan, Nunes, who would not show the documents to Nunes and Gowdy. And apparently they wanted to see the documents. And as it's been, I think Sarah Carter was the one that got the inside skinny on this, is that caused the meeting to erupt into a shouting match. It got really, really heated. And so that's why they never had a chance to really get any information in that meeting, because the hour-long meeting was nothing more than these guys shouting at each other about who had authority to see what or not authority to see what. They spent the entire hour arguing over the authority, whether or not they could see these documents or not. So the thing turned into a bust. That's what happened. So they rescheduled it, and then Thursday morning, they were expecting to get these documents, but then the DOJ at midnight on Wednesday night put out a memo or something saying, yeah, we've thought about it, and we're not going to turn them documents over to you tomorrow morning. So that made them even hotter under the collar than they already were. And now they're being told that next week that they'll be able to come over and view some of these documents. I don't know if they get to keep them, but they'll get to view some of them, and it's going to be the entire Gang of Eight. That means Burr and Feinstein and Adam Schiff and the whole rest of them. It'll be one good guy and 7 black hats, and you can imagine what kind of spin will come out of that. So that's what they're looking at. Plus, next week is going to be completely dominated with North Korea. That's why they're going to release the IG report next week. That's why they're going to go ahead and probably let Gowdy and Nunes see some of these documents next week, because they expect that the entire week next week is going to be dominated in the media cycle with what's going on with North Korea. They'll be able to bury everything and play down the IG report as much as possible. There will be leaks coming out before then, just like there already have been, to play it down as much as possible. And of course, whatever Gowdy and Nunes get to see, and I'm not so sure they'll get to see anything, and what they get to see will probably be redacted, and that'll lead to, it just never ends. It goes on and on and on, the same game, and they continue to allow themselves to be played. And I like Nunes, but quite honestly, at some point you have to wake up and realize that, these people are playing you. Over and over again, you go over there to look at documents, they don't produce them, or you want documents, they don't produce them. You want us to get information, they won't even let Nunes and Gowdy see the document that shows the name, the redacted name of the informant, which everyone knows is Stephen Halper. It's already known. They know who it is, and they still won't let him see the name. Come on. So again, this is why I've made other recommendations that they take another route. And the fact is, I think, being 5 months out from an election, they've got 30-some-odd Republicans in the Freedom Caucus who will stand behind them, but the other 200 Republicans don't want to get anywhere near it. not when they're 5 months out from an election. They just don't want to be in any controversial issues or any controversial positions as they're running for re-election. It's too risky for them. And so I think that Nunes has kind of resigned himself to the fact that that he's going to have to wait till the 2018 elections are over, and hopefully they can boot Paul Ryan, and maybe we get Jim Jordan as Speaker. And then if you got Jim Jordan as Speaker, the Republicans hold on to the House, maybe even pick up some seats, and you have the Democrats pretty much defeated down and out on the downs. After you defeat them in the 2018 election, they are vulnerable, and then you steamroll them. Then at that point, maybe Nunes thinks he can go get 100 Republicans to back him for action against the DOJ or the FBI. But right now, the votes aren't there. The people aren't there. He's got 36 guys. He needs about 100, 150, and he needs the Speaker. And he doesn't really have that. I mean, that's just the bottom line. Nunes is, he's doing the best he can with the hand he's playing, and he's not got a very good hand right now. Maybe after 2018 elections, things go well, he has a better hand to play. But I'm like a lot of you. I just don't have the patience, anymore. And I think that there's other things that they can do. I don't know that the Congress has much more they can do. I mean, that's pretty much the max of what they can do. There's not that much they can do. It's really now at the executive branch at that point. I mean, it's up to Trump. Trump can declassify everything. He can have a presidential commission. He can declassify the IG report. He can fire people. But there's a lot of political risk to all of it, and everything in Washington carries a political risk and a political calculation. And I think that plays into every decision that they make. And so for those of us out here and outside the swamp, we never consider the politics of anything. We don't care about the politics because we're not running for re-election or anything else. So we don't look at things through a political lens, but everybody in D.C. does. So that's where we have a disconnect, and that's why we're frustrated. Not that guys in the Freedom Caucus are not frustrated too. Jim Jordan, the last 2 interviews I've seen with him, he's just fit to be tied at this point. That's why I really hope that he wins the speakership, the speaker slot, because things will definitely change in that regard after 2018 if Jim Jordan is the speaker. I can assure you that. Because the speaker has a whole staff underneath him that can go out and whip the party, members of his party, into shape to get behind something. And he can use a lot of pressure because the speaker is also the leader of the Republican Party in the House, and he directs where the money goes. See? So that's why the speaker has so much power. And so Jim Jordan would have this really additional power behind him if he can become the speaker, and he could move another 100 or so Republicans to fall in line to call for subpoenas, possibly even getting rid of Rodenstein. Maybe Sessions, who knows? But that's the political angle on it, and that's what we've learned. Next, we have Clapper, the unwitting idiot. The unwitting idiot on the radio a couple of days ago with Hugh Hewitt, who's a neocon. And he's on the radio with Hugh Hewitt, and he's being questioned, and Hugh Hewitt starts asking him about the Samantha Power situation. And basically, Clapper, I don't know if you heard any clips of that interview, but I mean, Clapper threw Samantha Power right underneath the bus, man. I mean, he didn't cut her any slack at all. He threw her under the bus. Because Hugh Hewitt asked him about Power doing 260 unmaskings, and she says that others did it under her name. And Hewitt asked about that because he has a little bit of knowledge about how that process works, and he was questioning that. And so Clapper says to Hugh Hewitt, yeah, it is concerning that she did 260 unmaskings. He also said that Power's statement doesn't make sense because he, according to Clapper, quote, the only way you can make an unmasking request is that you have authorized access to the report in question in the first place. So he's suggesting that you can't do an unmasking based on someone else's request for a report and vice versa. So Clapper is seriously drawing into question Samantha Power's statement. Now Samantha Power is, of course, a liar. And of course, she's married to Cass Sunstein. If you don't know who Cass Sunstein is, Google him. Oh, he's a deep stater of the highest order, a real shithead. And he wrote a book about 5 years ago where he was making the case in this book that the government needs to lie to us more. They need more propaganda. They need to control TVs and newspapers more than they do. They need to make sure that everything that we're told is a lie. Cass Sunstein thinks that that's a very good idea for how to run a country. He thinks that you need to lie to the American people every day and make sure that they don't know the truth about all the nasty things that they do. He thinks that's a healthy environment, and that's a good thing for government, and they should do a lot more lying, and that they should never tell the truth, and that there should be constant propaganda 24 hours a day used against the citizens, because that's what's good for them. That's the argument he makes in the book. No, they don't like it, he says. They don't like it, but it's what's good for them. We, the ruling elite, need to sit here and do all kinds of crooked stuff and then lie about every bit of it, and that's good for America. That's good for Americans. They're just too stupid to know that it's good for them to be lied to by their government every day. That's the book he wrote, Cass Sunstein, husband of Samantha Power. Look him up. So, another thing that Hugh Hewitt asked Clapper, he said, well, but about how many unmaskings did you do? And Clapper said, I'd maybe do one unmasking every couple of weeks, but certainly not 260, and we know that a lot of them came in the last 2 months of the year, in December and January. January alone was like 100 and something unmaskings, 2-3 a day. And Clapper saying I did maybe one every couple of weeks, something like that. So, yes, so now we have Clapper throwing Samantha Power under the bus. I'm telling you, it's a circular firing squad that's coming. It's going to be a mess. It's going to be a bloodbath. Well, Judicial Watch just released 16 pages on new documents regarding the Lynch tarmac meeting with Slick Willie. And these documents show clearly that the decision was made not to prosecute the Right Reverend Clinton back as early as April 2016. It's all right there, folks. There's 2 or 3 lengthy emails. I didn't want to write all that out and read it back to you. You can look at it for yourself over on Conservative Treehouse. Probably other websites have it by now. Or Judicial Watch. Just go to Judicial Watch website and you can read them for yourself. But there's one particular email in there where you have that I did write down. And this was the email that was sent following the tarmac meeting, and it's an FBI official who sends out this email, and it's got a bunch of people in the chain, and it says it's an email that is basically warning his colleagues, with emphasis, I might add, warning his colleagues with emphasis, saying, our job is to protect the boss, that would be Comey, from harm and embarrassment. So yeah, they knew about the tarmac meeting. It was blown up, and they wanted to cover it up. They wanted to cover up the tarmac meeting. They wanted to go get that guy who leaked it to the media, and they cared not about the fact that the Attorney General is meeting with the husband of the person who was a target of an investigation, who was going to be questioned in 2 days after the tarmac meeting. No problem with that whatsoever. But yes, you can read these emails over there on the Judicial Watch website. It's just more evidence, as if we needed more evidence, because we already had plenty of evidence, but there's more evidence there, and there's still more about that tarmac meeting that hasn't been released, or that's been so heavily redacted you can't make heads or tails of it. But good job, Judicial Watch. They're getting a little bit as they go, but just more evidence of what we already knew. And we now know why Stormy Daniels decided to go get a lawyer and go after Trump, knowing good and well her entire case was BS. Now we know what it was all about, because Stormy Daniels has just announced the rollout of her new perfume along with the line of sex toys. So now she's got a new line of perfume and sex toys, and that's her big products promotion, and this whole thing was nothing more than a PR stunt to get her out there to help promote her perfume line and her sex toys. I wonder who was behind that. Stormy Daniels. There you go. Now we know the truth, and we can put that to bed. Andrew McCabe. Andrew McCabe interrogated Mike Flynn for the Russia hoax, the Russia hoax setup, the same exact time that Flynn was a witness against McCabe in a sexual discrimination suit. Now, we were talking about this a year ago. This was a story a year ago. Why it's coming back, I don't know. but it's now come back, and it needed to be looked at. It's a huge part. We were talking about it a year ago. It's a big part of why they went after Flynn and why McCabe went after Flynn. McCabe had been charged, or had been, I guess you could say charged by this woman, this female FBI agent named Robin Greitz. And she had filed a sexual discrimination suit against McCabe. And Mike Flynn was going to be one of her witnesses standing behind her. So, this was McCabe going after a witness in a case against him in a sexual discrimination suit. Mike Flynn was going to be one of the witnesses in that sex discrimination suit against McCabe. And that's the exact same time that McCabe was over there setting up, unlawfully and wrongfully, setting up McCabe. This is all coming out now. Now, it appears that Chuck Grassley has just figured this out. A little slow to the game, but at least he finally made it to the dance. So, now Grassley has figured this out, and he's sent off a letter, and he's now pursuing it. He has turned it over to the Inspector General. So that's another thing he wants the Inspector General to investigate, is this situation where McCabe was interviewing Mike Flynn at the same time Mike Flynn was going to be a witness against him in a discrimination suit. Conflict of interest. Never should have happened. So Grassley is on the game now. A little late than, I guess better late than never. And of course, to follow up on that, we have Paul Speary's bombshell article today, stating that it's a report that the Senate investigators now suspect that McCabe altered his 302 notes on Flynn. The matter has been referred to Horowitz. So, this is the same 302 that Comey and McCabe used, or they cleared Sally Yates to use, that she went over and used at the White House to get Flynn fired, knowing good and well that it was a falsified 302. So now we have Comey and McCabe and Yates all knowingly using a falsified 302, falsified by McCabe and Peter's been stroking us. And that's probably going to be revealed when this FBI agent who was there testifies in front of Congress, and this is why this is coming out now. And again, another thing, this is more evidence, but we've already had sufficient evidence that there was an issue with the 302 with Flynn, because Peter's been stroking us says it to Lisa Page in one of the texts. He's talking about, in one of the texts, I can't remember the exact wording, but essentially he's saying, hey, there's a lot of problems with those 302s. If, in fact, the Congress wants to get their hands on those 302s, it's going to be a problem. And now they're getting their hands on those 302s. They're about to. That's one of the things they want, and I expect they'll probably eventually get. And, of course, the IG's probably already looked at that 302 and those 302s and the Flynn situation. He's probably already got all that stuff, and it's probably going to be in the IG report already. So we will just have to see about that. But yeah, Flynn is also up to his eyeballs in altering the 302. Peter's been stroking us, was involved in that as well. And then, of course, it was Comey and McCabe that authorized Yates to use a falsified 302 to take down Flynn, to lead them to believe that he was under investigation. Which, keep in mind, this clears Trump of any obstruction charge, because the comments that Trump made were several days after this meeting occurred, which means that Flynn was not under investigation when Trump asked Comey to go easy on Flynn. So there you go. Senator Rand Paul is demanding that John Brennan testify in front of Congress about his dealings with British intelligence during the 2016 election. Very well done, Senator Paul. Keep pushing. We have Sergei Milian, source B of the dossier. We now learn that he offered Papadopoulos a $30,000 a month position, but the only thing, the hook was that he had to be part of the Trump team to be able to collect the money. In other words, he was being offered $30,000 a month to be an operative for the deep state against Trump, and Papadopoulos turned it down. We have Grassley demanding that Sherlock Christopher Wray, the FBI director, hand over the unredacted version of the FBI's confidential human source policy guide. Yes, what have I been telling you for about 2 or 3 weeks now? Whenever you put an FBI informant into an operation, you have to create a file on him. And he gets a number, and everything has to be noted, because that's what you're going to use in court, because you're not going to bring an undercover informant into court and blow his cover. But you need his testimony. His file serves as his testimony. Every informant has a file if he's legitimate. So Grassley understands this, and so he wants to see the FBI's confidential human source policy guide so that he can verify that what I'm telling you is true, because he knows the same. He wants to have it in writing, and then he's going to say, once he's got the policy guide, he's going to say, see, the policy guide says that this is what you had to do if you were following the law. So that means that you've got a file. We want the file. That's what's going on here. Sessions is refusing to bring charges against the Awans. A lot of people are following this story pretty closely. I try not to get too distracted into the Awan thing, but it's hard not to. Well, I mean, there's a conflict of reports coming out about that, because I just read a report 2 days ago that says that the Awans, him and his wife, maybe his brother as well, are wanting to get into a plea deal. They're wanting a plea deal, and it sounds like they want to roll over on Debbie Blabbermouth Wasserman Schultz. They want to give up Debbie Blabbermouth Wasserman Schultz in return for their freedom. Just like McCabe wants to give up anybody and everybody to save his neck. So, you know, the arraignment is next week for the Awans. So Sessions refusing to bring charges. I don't know what's going on with that. I mean, something's going on. I mean, we know the arraignment date is set for next week. What Sessions is doing, I really don't know. We'll just have to wait and see how that turns out. Now, yesterday I mentioned that I thought that in addition to telling the Congress, Nunes and other people doing the investigation, that they need to look into this 6-agency task force, which is where this operation was being run out of, Langley, Virginia, and stop focusing so much on the FBI. That was the cover operation. Yesterday I talked about the fact that what Trump may need to do is one of two things for sure. He needs to declassify the IG report, and every single one of the IG reports as they come out. The day after they come out, declassify them. That way you ain't got Rodenstein sitting there with his pen along with Christopher No Shit Sherlock Ray blacking out everything. Once they realize that he's going to declassify it the day after it comes out, they'll stop doing that anyway. And they might start cooperating. But if you really want to put the fear of God in them, Trump should just tweet out, hey, I'm thinking about putting together a presidential commission. That'll put the fear of God in them. Because the presidential commissions, as you know from the 9/11 hearings, or from, if you're old enough to remember the John Tower Commission hearings, if you're old enough to remember, if you can go back to the Kennedy assassination. I was too young to remember the Warren Commission hearings, but I've gone back and watched them now in black and white many years later. But at the time they were going on, I was like 1, so I was like an infant, not even walking, so I wouldn't have, understood anything going on. But the thing about these presidential commissions is those are all public hearings. It's all open public hearings that they have. There might be classified information that they don't talk about in the hearings, but the hearings themselves are public. And this is really what you want to do if you're President Trump, because then these hearings become a major news story, and every single day you get people sucked up into following it. And if you want to get the truth out, this is the best way to do it, because it will dominate media coverage. That's one reason you do a presidential commission. That's one reason. There's other reasons. But I looked into presidential commissions, and can any of you guess how many presidential commissions there have been in the history of the country? How many presidential commissions have been set up since we became a country? 1782. 171. 171 presidential commissions have been set up. So it's not rare. The presidential commission is defined as the following: a task force ordained by the president to complete a specific special investigation or research, quasi-judicial in nature, public or in-camera hearings. A task force ordained by the president to complete a specific special investigation or research, quasi-judicial in nature, public or in-camera hearings. That's how you define a presidential commission. There can be two purposes of a presidential commission. One would be to draw attention to a problem. The other would be to delay action. It can be also used to produce evidence that can be later used for criminal prosecutions or proceedings. And there's many examples of that, where presidential commissions have led to hearings, criminal proceedings. Three examples of that would be the Tower Commission, the Rogers Commission, and the Warren Commission. There are others. So my recommendation, Mr. President, if you're watching, is to first threaten the Presidential Commission and see if that works. See if that gets Rodenstein and no shit Sherlock Christopher Wray to act right. If they don't, then do it. Set up a Presidential Commission. And I've already laid out, and some other commenters in the previous video laid out exactly what that should look like. There must be civilians on that, regular folks on that commission. There must not be any swamp creatures on that commission. They must be paid very well so they can't be bribed, and they must have protection. So my suggestion, Mr. President, is you set up your presidential commission to look into the 2016 election and the things that went on. And the very first three things that your commission should be looking at and digging into would be, number one, they need to, in fact, you might even put this guy on the commission, William Binney, one of the architects of several of those programs over at the NSA. William Binney says that you don't need the DNC servers. Of course, you could get the logs, and that would help you some things. But as far as finding out who actually transferred files out of the DNC, the NSA collects that data. File transfers. So the very first thing that they would do is verify whether or not it was Russians hacking or whether there was a leak. That's the very first thing that you would want to do in this commission. And that means you'd want to call Binney, say, okay, Mr. Binney, direct us over to the NSA, go over there with us, and tell them what we need. And Mr. Binney will say, okay, we need everything, every file transferred outside the Democrat National Committee in the year 2016. Or maybe from March through September 2016, when the three alleged hacks occurred. And they'll be able to give you all the logs on the file transfers out of the DNC and find out where they came from. That's the very first thing you do. You either knock down the Russia hack the DNC theory, or you back it up with the facts, with the evidence. That's the first thing you do on this commission. The second thing you do is you look into that secret 6-agency task force, which is where the operations were being run. The coup d'etat was being run out of Langley, Virginia, the CIA, the 6-agency task force. That is the second area that you'll want to probe in your presidential commission. And then the third thing that you want to probe in your presidential commission is the involvement of the foreign government. The foreign government. It was not the Russians, it was the British intelligence that was involved in meddling in the 2016 election, along with the Democratic Party, the Obama administration, U.S. intelligence agencies, and law enforcement agencies as well. So that is what you need, a presidential commission. You need to find out and verify exactly what happened with the servers, leak or hack. You need to unravel the 6-agency task force, find out who was all the players involved. We know who some of them were, but we need to know the rest. You need to unwind that whole thing and find out if there's any documents and get them all. And then you need to look into the foreign government involvement, and you need to require that the British stand up and be accounted for. And you need to tell the British government that they need to produce some documents as well and some witnesses as well. Maybe by video conference, maybe you go over there and interview them, maybe you have them come here. It doesn't matter. They're involved. They involved themselves, and now they're involved. And now if they want to say, well, we're like a foreign country, we don't want to get involved in that. You're involved in it, British intelligence. And you need to be called out and corrected. So, like I said, when you're on YouTube, Facebook, any social media, keep typing in that phrase, 6-agency task force. You might even want to add presidential commission to that. Just get the words out there. Get the words out there. Let people hear those words Start Googling what they mean, what they're about. What are you talking about, Presidential Commission? What are you talking about, 6-agency task force? Put that in the comments section of your comments as you comment on other videos or Facebook or whatever else you do. Get it out there, and hopefully it'll sink in, and we'll make some progress. Thank you for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow. You guys see on Saturday. See you guys. Bye.